Good evening, I'm Genevieve Wu. Tonight's top stories. Stepping up cooperation to ensure stable and open trade. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong explains why that's crucial for the survival of small states as Singapore and Qatar hold their high-level joint committee meeting. The race to capture Singaporeans' votes heats up. Singapore's three presidential candidates ramp up their campaigning in the only weekend before Election Day. Also tonight, taking stock of the nation's efforts to grow the digital economy, Singapore to publish its first report on the sector in the coming weeks. Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong says a stable, open trading environment is crucial for the survival of small states like Singapore and Qatar. He adds that it's imperative for both sides to step up cooperation amid a global trade order that's under siege. Mr. Lee made the remarks at the opening of the 8th Singapore-Qatar high-level joint committee meeting.
It's timely that we are convening this high-level joint committee meeting now. For 17 years, the HLGAC has been a key platform for cooperation between Singapore and Qatar, and cumulatively we have signed more than 30 agreements. I'm very glad that yesterday, together with Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed, we witnessed the signing of several more agreements between our countries.
PM Lee noted that the digital sector could be a bright spot. He's urged both countries to build a comprehensive and safe digital ecosystem as the sector is a key driver of economic growth. Singapore and Qatari senior government officials held wide-ranging discussions. These include artificial intelligence and digital governance. Both sides affirmed the desire for stronger collaboration in the digital, economic and social fronts. Singapore also welcomed Doha's accession to the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation in Southeast Asia last year. The move is in line with Qatar's growing involvement in the region. Presidential candidate Tan Kin Lian insists he will not play the role of an opposition to the government if elected. He says he will be a problem solver instead, working together with the Prime Minister on solutions to make Singapore better.
I want to say the relationship between the Prime Minister and the President should be among equals. It is not one superior and the other less superior. It's among equal. And both sides must respect each other. And we should seek cooperation, because confrontation does not help. We have to spend our energy solving the problem, not fighting each other.
Mr. Tan was speaking to the media during his walkabout at Geylang Serai Market this morning. There, he engaged with the Malay community in a bid to better understand the concerns they had. He also stressed that if he becomes president, he hopes to share his ideas on areas such as affordable housing, COE prices, as well as GST. While Mr. Tan acknowledges that pushing for policy changes is not part of a president's constitutional duties, he says he can improve citizens' lives without tweaking existing blueprints.
I have ideas even about making housing affordable. And it doesn't cost the government to change their existing policy. It is what somebody call packaging, the perception. So the other problem that I didn't mention is COE. I have an out-of-the-box solution. How we should determine, how we should handle COE, which will not cause the government to lose revenue. So it's sometimes a matter of perception. How you present those policies.
Mr. Tan adds that if elected, he will continue the tradition of President's Challenge, launched by the late President S.R. Nathan in 2000. He says he has some ideas of his own to support seniors and will announce them later in the campaign. Presidential candidate Tharman Shanmugaratnam says if elected, his presidency will focus on creating a culture of respect for all in Singapore. He was speaking at an election meeting attended by 650 registered guests from the public at Pasir Panjang Power Station on Friday evening. It's the first election meeting to be approved by the police during this election campaign.
And in this next phase of our society, we really have to focus on that social trampoline that's not just about policies, but about the way we relate to each other and respect each other. And finally, I would say we have the opportunity of developing a deeper form of multiculturalism in Singapore.
Questions from participants at the event range from challenges of an aging society to issues faced by marginalized groups in Singapore. Giving his views as a private citizen, Mr. Tharman says moving too quickly to shift societal norms will lead to pushback and more dissent in society. He adds that societal norms need to evolve gradually as per the needs of the community.
We should not rush this. It is honestly too risky in a multi-religious society, and it doesn't mean that in the meantime we regress. We've got to respect everyone for who they are, but be very careful in how we evolve our social norms, because it's not just a matter of our individual views, but it's a matter of keeping society together.
Mr. Tharman also says he will champion long-term support for the disadvantaged if elected. While he recognizes current efforts by the government, he believes that he can do more to lend a hand. Mr. Tharman was speaking to the media during a walkabout at Amoy Street Food Centre.
When you're poor and when you're disadvantaged, you cannot underestimate how people can lose confidence or feel that they are being looked down upon. So earn their trust, respect them, and help them to develop themselves. That's been our passion, my wife and I, and a whole group of people together with us for many years. And I'm now going to scale that up.
With the polls just a week away, Mr. Tharman says he's confident of his chances. When asked what makes him stand out from the other two candidates, this is what he has to say.
I'm not a newcomer. I'm a known entity in Singapore. What you see is what you get.
Presidential candidate Ng Kok Song says Singaporeans need to be bolder for the country to reach its full potential. The former GIC investment chief made these comments in a video posted on his Facebook page.
I think Singapore is operating at 60% of its potential because we are too cautious. We dare not take risk. Now, we mustn't take reckless risk, but I think we can take a little bit more risk to be a bit more creative, to be a bit more adventurous, because that will make us more prosperous. It will also be more fun.
Mr. Ng did not plan for any public walkabouts today, but he attended two private events, one at SPH Media and the other at the National University of Singapore Society. He went on 4 walkabouts yesterday, meeting residents and hawkers at Ghim Moh Market. And ABC Brickworks. He was also accompanied by fiancée Sybil Lau to visit patients and seniors at Kwong Wai Shu Hospital, where she was invited as a guest. Mr. Ng wrapped up his day at Chom Chom Food Centre in Serangoon Gardens. At Kwong Wai Shu Hospital, he explained why he decided against using banners and posters for his campaign. He also urged youngsters to help seniors with social media.
I don't have the manpower resources that other candidates have to, number one, make the posters, hang them up, take them down. And this is not just one constituency, this is all over the island. So it is the magnitude of that task is beyond our limited capacity. I hope that the younger generation will, help their parents and their grandparents, with social media. So it will be a fantastic educational experience for the older generation to learn from the younger generation.
Mr. Ng believes the education goes just beyond digital immersion. To him, sustainability is also key, as he urged Singaporeans to move with the times.
There's a benefit, no doubt, in having posters and banners. But when we are determined to become a more sustainable society, to become greener and more environmental friendly, this is 2023, not 2011. We have to move with the times. And therefore, I decided to make that trade-off. I would rather be environmentally friendly, than spend on posters and banners, which after a few days has to be taken down and sent to the waste dump.
One candidate for Singapore's presidency says he wants to do something meaningful for the people. Tan Kin Lian wants to reflect the aspirations of ordinary citizens to the government. Alif Amshar with the last of a three-part series on the country's presidential candidates.
Mr. Tan Kin Lian is one of three men who'll be on the ballot slip come 3rd September. He's no stranger to these proceedings, having made his maiden bid for the post in 2011. Back then, he finished last out of 4 candidates, getting just 4.9% of more than 2.2 million votes cast. As a result, he lost his election deposit of 48,000 Singapore dollars.
What hurt me is not the loss of the money, but some of the unkind remarks. But this time round, I'm very confident that I will not lose my deposit. I even quite confident that I might be elected as a president because I represent the only independent candidate, and many people say that's the most important criteria.
Mr. Tan was a member of the ruling People's Action Party for 30 years. He left in 2008 and has never held public office. If elected, he says his first task is to build trust with the government by holding conversations with cabinet ministers.
I'm not there to disrupt what they are doing. I'm just trying to, I would like to help them to find better ways. So that will be that conversation. Now, I've got 3 goals: reduce the cost of living, make housing affordable, and make jobs secure. Of course, I recognize that this is the duty of the government, not the president, to run the country. I recognize that. But I'm sure some of my experiences will be quite useful to the government, and I'll be quite happy to share my views with them.
These views and experiences are from heading NTUC Income Insurance for 30 years, eventually becoming its CEO. During that time, he says he grew the company's assets from 28 million Singapore dollars to 16 billion. He says he did so by keeping costs low and giving good returns, which he believes are the same principles as running a country. During his campaign, he's looking to reach voters in the middle ground, including young people. His slogan is "Bring back trust, give us hope," and he has ideas on how to do so.
You can build up a trust just by being more open. And you tell people what is actually happening, but you must tell them in the way that they trust you. They trust you. Now, I'm a very honest person. I do not try to present things in a couch things to look nice. I just tell people quite honestly what it is.
His campaign symbol depicts 4 figures representing the major ethnic groups in Singapore. They reach out toward a flower, which Mr. Tan says symbolizes hope for a better future.
Still ahead on News Tonight, Standard, Plus and Prime. We take a closer look at what the new public housing classification entails. That update straight from the source. Plus, voters in Tanjong Pagar GRC who received 2 poll cards promised assistance to ensure a smooth voting process come polling day.
My Mitsubishi Electric StarMax aircon saves me energy and money. It's easy to clean and is so quiet.
A new classification for Singapore's public housing from the second half of next year. Standard, Plus and Prime, which come with varying conditions. We will be getting more on this from our guest next from the National Development Ministry. But first, a quick recap. The new category, Plus, that's for flats within each region nearer to MRT stations and town centres and come with more subsidies. One caveat, a longer minimum occupation period or MOP of 10 years, and owners will have to pay back some of the subsidy at resale. They also can't rent out the whole flat. The income ceiling for resale buyers is $14,000. The second category, Prime flats, that's for flats in the city and also the Greater Southern Waterfront, and so come with the tightest restrictions, also including a 10-year MOP. Owners must pay back the most subsidies at resale and they can't rent the whole flat. The income ceiling for resale buyers is $14,000 for families, $7,000 for singles. Standard flats will be available island-wide, forming the bulk of BTO supply. But owners get to enjoy regular subsidies with a 5-year MOP, no income ceiling for resale buyers. Now, for a closer look, we speak to Senior Minister of State for National Development, Tan Kiat Hau. Mr. Tan, thanks for joining us today. Right. So people who live near the Prime and the Plus areas, right, these would be able to charge a premium, I think, for their property. Do you expect a price surge? And on the buyer side, do you expect some unhappiness?
Well, Genevieve, these are questions naturally on people's mind. This is a different framework from the BTO framework that we are familiar with today, mature, non-mature. Now you have standard, plus, and prime.
Yes.
So naturally people are asking, so what is this framework about and what does it mean to me as this existing homeowner or someone who's planning to buy a flat? So maybe you answer those questions, but maybe you take a step back and ask the important question as well to set a context, to understand these issues. Why are we doing so? Why are we doing so? During the National Day rally, Prime Minister has also laid out 3 objectives of this new framework. In fact, these 3 objectives actually have received broad consensus. We had a large-scale dialogue with Singaporeans as part of the housing conversation, as part of Forward Singapore. We do that on a regular basis, but we did a large-scale one recently, 16,000 people, and they gave different views, different people from different walks of life, different family circumstances, different needs, different aspirations. But 3 broad consensus objectives. 1, HDB continue to provide good quality, affordable housing for Singaporeans. Secondly, to have a good mix in our estates. And thirdly, fairness and equity across Singaporeans, across generations. And that's the reason why we are putting out this framework, Standard, Plus and Prime, to support this ambition moving forward.
Okay, so back to your point, Standard, Plus and Prime. Do you expect some confusion over the new classification? And how is the ministry helping, I suppose, to communicate this?
Well, for standard flats, actually, this is basically the BTO flats that we are all very familiar with.
Okay.
It's a really current set of BTO projects,
Sure.
right? 5-year MOPs, subsidies. But moving forward, looking at Singapore's development, actually, many parts of Singapore is very well developed. The mature, non-mature framework may not be relevant moving forward.
Okay.
And actually, you find that actually more of the BTOs will be in good locations around center of Singapore and also very close to good amenities in what we now know as mature estates. And for those choicier locations, certainly in property, you say location, location, location,
Yes.
means that they will naturally be cost more, price higher. How do we make sure those flats still remain accessible to a large number of Singaporeans and to have a good mix within the estates? And that's the reason why we have to provide more subsidies for those flats. And because of more subsidies, to be fair, we'll have tighter restrictions.
Okay.
So these are your plus and plus flats in the region. And for the choices of choices, locations, very good locations, these are the prime flats.
Okay.
So that's how I would think about it. Standard, plus and prime. Standard are the flats that we are familiar with. Plus flats, choice locations within a region, close to good amenities, good location attributes, very desirable, and prime flat, the choices of all.
Okay, got it. So let's look at some of the new rules, right? So resale of the plus flats and just like the prime flats will be sold only to Singaporeans, right? Can you explain the intention behind this and how does it sync with the ethnic integration policy?
So I think it goes back to the 3 objectives. And how does these conditions meet the 3 objectives? One, you mentioned about the longer minimum occupancy period, MOP of 10 years. And I can understand some Singaporeans say, 10 years is not a short period of time. A lot of things in the family can change, a lot of things in life can change. I'm not very sure 10 years is something for me. I understand. And this is the reason why we try to strike a right balance between owner occupancy and as well as to meet the three objectives we talk about. Higher subsidies, but to be fair. And you look at HDB's data, actually majority of Singaporeans actually stay in their flats more than 10 years before they sell. Secondly, when we discussed this idea with many of the participants as part of the housing conversation, there was broad-based support. So when we talk about the resale conditions of MOP, talking about the Singaporean nexus, it's really back down to three objectives of keeping flats affordable, good mix, not just of the first buyer, but also subsequent buyers of the flat, a good mix within the estate, and a sense of fairness.
Okay. Let me take you up on your point of the minimum occupation period. So we're talking about 10 years, right? Would the government consider special waivers, meaning special groups, for example, seniors, to sell this earlier? Because like you said, 10 years is not short. We're talking about seniors, for example.
Well, the way I would think about it is that firstly, when someone decides to buy a flat, and a part of decision point, look at standard, plus, and prime, and the different requirements and resale eligibility conditions that tie to different categories, there are actually many options.
Okay.
The framework will be launched second half of next year.
Okay.
And even when we launch it, the standard flats, as you earlier mentioned, are the current BTO flats, will be the bulk of these launches. Right? And there are many more resale flats, 1.1 million existing HDB flats, who do not come under the new framework. We are not retrospectively applying them. So there are options for someone's buying. At the same time, we understand that 10 years may result in, some people do have some extenuating circumstances, changes in family, changes in life. The assurance that HDB gives to these families that we look at such cases on a one case-by-case basis, look at individual circumstances, and we take a look at that.
Okay, all right, that's good. Let's look at singles. That's another group of people we're looking at, right? So with the change in housing policy for singles, they are now able to buy flats across all these three categories. And why do we still then stick the need to 35 before being allowed to buy, say, a two-room flat?
We've been also speaking to many singles as part of a housing conversation, bringing them in, hearing their views. The first observation I will make is that singles are not a homogeneous group.
Okay.
Right? There are younger seniors, perhaps just starting out in the workplace, wanting their own place on their own, to be independent. There are also seniors who are a bit older, a bit more settled, but want to live near parents to take care of family, maybe older parents. And so singles have different needs, different aspirations, different wants. And over the years, the government has been listening closely to singles, hearing them, understanding them, and trying their best to meet everyone's needs and expectations as well. Over decades, we've been refining our policy. Actually, most recently in 2013, we allowed singles to buy BTO directly from HDB in non-mature estates. And we saw over the years up the grants eligible, that's eligibility grants for singles. And even last year, we increased the quota that we give for singles in terms of flats set aside. So we'll be updating our policy. In this move, I think many singles actually appreciate that we allow singles now to buy two-room flexi flats across the different categories, standard, plus, and prime. And now they actually can live near the parents who may live in mature estates. So they appreciate it. And my assurance to singles is that we are continuing this conversation. In fact, there are many interesting ideas that come out of the conversation. Rent-to-own models, co-living models, or intergenerational living models. And we are continuing this conversation with singles and trying to find ways of meeting their needs. But they understand the government is also in a very difficult position, having to balance the needs of different communities in Singapore. And in a landscape, Singapore is always a big challenge.
Sure. All right, Mr. Tan, that's the time we have for now, but thank you so much for adding more to this conversation. Thanks for joining us.
Generally, if I could just end off by saying that this is a big move that we are making to continue to ensure that HDB flats remain affordable and good quality, ensuring that we continue to have a good mix in our estates and assure a fair system for all Singaporeans. It's a big move in this direction, and hope that Singaporeans can take time to understand the framework and also reach out to us if any questions or queries.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tan. And
much.
that was Senior Minister of State for National Development, Tan Kiat Hao. Now, coming up, how's the manufacturing sector faring in July and the prospects of recovery in the coming months? Plus, Shanti Pereira bows out of the 200-meter race at the World Athletics Championship, but not before breaking a record and making history.
Weather Report brought to you by Mitsubishi Electric.
Who received 2 poll cards will get help from election officials at the polling station on 1st September. Some 9,800 of them were erroneously sent extra poll cards due to a mistake by the printers. The Elections Department says it became aware of the issue on Wednesday and is reaching out to affected voters by post. In a response to CNA, ELD says officials at the affected polling stations will assist the voters. Those who turn up with a poll card bearing the wrong voter serial number can still cast their vote. The polling team will verify the status based on their NRIC or passport. ELD says it will work with their printing contractor to ensure a similar incident does not happen again. It added it remains committed to ensure the smooth administration and conduct of the elections. Singapore is publishing its first digital economy report in the next few weeks. Communications and Information Minister Josephine Teo says it will review how the sector is contributing to the overall economy. Mrs. Teo was speaking at a good governance conference. She says without good data, people can only rely on impressions.
As a result, we cannot really analyze the factors that have contributed to the growth of the digital economy and compare them across countries as a way of informing our own considerations. Neither can we easily identify the gaps and take steps to close them for the common good.
The inaugural report will help monitor the direction and pace of change over time and help the country take stock on efforts to make firms go digital and grow the tech workforce. While the information and communications sector was the fastest growing sector in the past 5 years, SMEs still lag the larger companies in adapting technology. Still, more are getting on board recently. Economists are expecting Singapore's manufacturing sector to expand in the 4th quarter. That's as factory output fell a marginal 0.9% year-on-year in July. The fall marks the 10th straight month of contraction, but it was significantly less than expected as the key electronics segment bounced back into growth. The electronics sector expanded 5.1% following 6 months of contraction. The growth was led by gains from the semiconductors as well as Infocons and consumer electronics segments. The transport engineering segment grew close to 21%, with the aerospace segment leading the charge. Biomedical manufacturing was the worst performing cluster, contracting 22.6%. Singapore's sprint queen Shanti Pereira has missed out on the final spot in the women's 200-meter event at the World Athletics Championship in Budapest. Shanti started strong in the semi-final, that's her on the outside lane, but she faded eventually, finishing 6th. Jamaica took top spot, followed by the US. Shanti's performance was just shy of a national record of 22.57 seconds, clocked during the heats a day earlier. That timing saw her qualifying for the 2024 Paris Olympics. Coming up after the news is On the Red Dot. This week, it's delving into esports. The world's first Olympic esports was held in Singapore earlier in June. More than 130 players from over 60 countries gathered to fight for the first medals at this esports showdown. On the Red Dot tracks the journey of 3 Singaporeans on their quest to make history in the gaming world. And that's news tonight. Join us again tomorrow. Good night.
This program is available on demand for free on